Guess what? It's Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021, and welcome to the reading of the Record Courier. If you don't know by now, my name is Pam, and we'll begin our reading with the area deaths. Daniel Lau, 50, of Hiram, passed away March 7th. The Green Family Funeral Home is assisting the family. Kenneth Eugene Duval, 88, of Center Point, West Virginia, passed away on Thursday, February 4th, at the Gardens at Liberty Park in Streetsboro. A private visitation and service will be held at Davis Funeral Home in Salem. Arlene M. Wellhausen, 80, of Rootstown, passed away at her home on Saturday, March 6th. Friends may gather for calling hours from 2 to 4 p.m. and 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, March 11th, at the Shorts Spicer Crislip Funeral Home, Ravenna Chapel. Family and friends may gather at the funeral home on Friday from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. before the Mass of Christian Burial, which will be on Friday, March the 12th, at 11 a.m. at Immaculate Conception Church in Ravenna. Benny Jane Kiefer, 88, of Streetsboro, passed away Saturday, March 6th, at her home with her family by her side. Calling hours will be Wednesday, March 10th, from 1 to 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. until the time of the funeral service at 7 p.m. at the Short Spicer Crislip Funeral Home's Streetsboro Chapel. Paula Jo Trickett, born April 12, 1957, of Kent, Ohio, passed away unexpectedly on March 1st. The family will be holding a private viewing and cremation with burial to follow at Riverside Cemetery in Shalersville. And that concludes the area deaths listed in the online edition, so we'll begin with our first article. Man resentenced to life without parole in Kent State University student's murder, by Jeff Saunders. Is it possible that someday DeMonte D. Graham may walk out of prison a free man if at least one or two appeals are successful? But not if Judge Lori Pittman and the family of Nicholas Massa have anything to say about it. More than 4 years after Pittman sentenced the now 24-year-old Graham, formerly of Akron, to death for fatally shooting an 18-year-old Massa during a robbery in Kent, Pittman resentenced Graham on Monday to life without possibility of parole for aggravated murder. The resentencing was due to a decision the Ohio Supreme Court handed down in December that reaffirmed Graham's conviction, but that vacated the death penalty and ordered the case sent back to the county court for resentencing. Pittman told Graham before sentencing him again on Monday that she remembers the 2016 court case. One thing that sticks in my memory more than anything else is that you grinned at Massa's family as you walked out the door because you thought it was funny, said Pittman. The father of murder victim Nicholas Massa, Joe Massa, confronts DeMonte Graham in court during Graham's sentencing hearing. Pittman also affirmed her previous sentence of an additional 61 years for other first-degree felony charges of aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, and 3 counts of kidnapping. A jury also convicted Graham on, as well as for 2 firearm specifications. Pittman's decision came after attorneys for Graham argued for parole after 25 years, citing Graham's relative immaturity at the time of the shooting and a troubled childhood. Massa's parents and older sister, however, spoke out in favor of life without parole. Nick doesn't get a second chance at life, said Jackie Massa, his mother. More, resentencing set for a man who killed Kent State University student. A robbery in Kent that became deadly. On February 7, 2016, Massa, 18, was visiting the apartment of a friend in Kent that Graham, Ty Kremling of Stowe, Anton Planica of Medina, and Marquis Greer of Massillon targeted for robbery. Kremling, Planica, and Greer were all 17 at the time. Graham, who had just turned 19, was accused of helping the other 2 teens rob the apartment. A person they knew in the apartment sold drugs and kept money in a lockbox, according to the court filing. According to court testimony, Massa was visiting the apartment when the 3 intruders robbed it with guns drawn. Graham is accused of shooting Massa while Kremling and Greer searched the apartment for money. Planica, the getaway driver, remained outside in his green Dodge truck with the engine running. The cases of the 3 juveniles were transferred from Portage County Juvenile Court to be tried as adults. Kremling and Greer pleaded guilty to murder as part of plea deals and were sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole after 15 years. Planyka pleaded guilty to attempted murder and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. DeMonte Graham's defense attorney, Donald Malarsic, prepares to address the court during the sentencing hearing for Graham's murder conviction. A jury convicted Graham, and Pittman sentenced him to death in November 2016. Graham appealed his case to the state's highest court, bypassing the 11th District Court of Appeals because he was on death row. Graham's attorneys at the time argued that there were mitigating factors, including evidence of bias on the part of at least some of the jurors in Graham's trial because he is black. Donald Malarsic, one of Graham's current attorneys, said Monday that the Ohio Supreme Court is being asked to look again at Graham's conviction, and an appeal of Pittman's resentencing is expected in the 11th District Court of Appeals. DeMonte D. Graham had a troubled youth. Evidence presented by Malarsic and Randall Porter, Graham's other attorney, included a 15-minute video of 5 of Graham's relatives, including his mother and grandmother, speaking about Graham's troubled life and the environment he lived in that included an absent father, violence and substance abuse, leading to Graham beginning to run away and skip school by the time he was 14. His mother wasn't available because she was always working, said Porter. His father wasn't available because he was in prison. Porter added that Graham self-medicated with prescription anxiety and hyperactivity drugs and that he did not receive adequate treatment for mental health issues. Malarsic said, "Families matter, good, bad, or ugly. That's why we're here." In addition, remote testimony was offered by Dr. Lawrence Steinberg, a professor of psychology at Temple University in Philadelphia. Steinberg said that Graham, who had just turned 19 at the time of Mass's death, was still considered to be in late adolescence and adolescent, even at that age, often have trouble with such cognitive skills as judgment and impulse control. Steinberg said he believes the human brain is only fully developed by age 22 or 23, and some experts believe older than that. No one believes the brain's fully developed by the time they're 19 years of age, he said, adding that that was Graham's age at the time, has been described as one in which the accelerator is pressed to the floor before there is a good braking system. When questioned by Portage County prosecutor Victor Vigliucci, Steinberg acknowledged that he had never met or interviewed Graham. Victim's family speaks out. Prior to Pittman's resentencing Graham, Kelly Massa, Nicholas Massa's older sister, talked about how the loss of her brother more than 5 years ago still impacts my life, and all that she missed sharing with her brother, including his graduation from KSU and her upcoming wedding. 5 birthdays have passed that I could not share with my best friend, she said. Soon I will have children of my own, and they will not know their Uncle Nick. She spoke of how her parents now live in fear for the safety of their other children and how she herself lives in fear of being a crime victim. I will always be Nick's voice, since Nick's voice has been taken away by someone who has shown no remorse, she said. Joe Massa, Nick's father, thanked Pittman for the death sentence she handed down in 2016. 5 years ago, no one wore masks, but one person, a coward, wore a mask, he said. No one like that should ever again see the light of day. He added, I told my family not to hate. It's very hard not to hate today. In arguing against parole, Vigliucci said Graham has received the consideration he is entitled to. We're fortunate, Judge, that you heard this case, heard the details. I heard the details, he said. The state's position is that he has received the mercy, all the mercy he deserves. Portage County Commissioners pledged to return to live streaming their meetings, eventually, by Diane Smith. Portage County Commissioners say they may go back to live streaming, but it could be weeks or longer until that happens. Meanwhile, one commissioner doesn't understand why the panel can't go back to the old system it used until last week, until upgrades can be made. A week after voting to end live streaming of public meetings, the issue was revived Thursday at the request of Commissioner Vicki Klein, who was disappointed that her fellow commissioners are waiting to do upgrades to the county system before providing video recordings of the meetings. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, commissioners have been recording their meetings on Zoom, then uploading the recordings live to YouTube. Commissioners Sabrina Christian Bennett and Tony Badalamenti, both Republicans, voted last week to end the live streaming in favor of an audio recording, citing audio quality issues. Both dismissed claims that they're trying to hide something or violating the Open Meetings Act, which they said had been advanced by local media sources, including the Record Courier. "It's just not true," Christian Bennett said. "We actually are going above and beyond." Badalamenti, meanwhile, responded to recent news stories about his failure to wear a mask during a meeting. "I'm a doctor by trade," said Badalamenti, who has a chiropractic practice in Aurora. "There isn't any reason to do that." Previously, he said a mask is not necessary because he's surrounded on 3 sides by plexiglass during meetings, and he wears a mask when not seated at the table for meetings. Christian Bennett said she had obtained a quote for Wi-Fi in the administration building, which she said was necessary for live streaming. She said the cost was reasonable, but didn't include the entire building. Although she said the cost is likely to be under the $50,000 threshold to put the contract out for bidding, she said the process of getting quotes on the equipment and installation would take about 3 weeks. Klein, meanwhile, said she didn't understand why the old system couldn't be used in the meantime. Christian Bennett, however, who once did Zoom meetings from her office when the administration building was closed, said connectivity issues forced IT staff to hardwire a notebook for her use. "I just think they're making it harder than it needs to be," she said after the meeting. Because COVID-19 restrictions require that only 10 people can be in a room at one time, members of the public, including the media, were asked to leave the room at one point Tuesday during public presentation. Janice Simmons Mortimer of Hiram said the pandemic, despite its losses, made public meetings more accessible, and she would like to see more of it, with the commissioners making their meetings more available. "Let's continue the live streaming," she said. The audio recordings were initially proposed to be live, but Amy Hutchinson, the commissioner's clerk, said she had issues to put them on the county's website. Christian Bennett dismissed criticism that recordings weren't put on the website, saying, "We have a county to run." Badalamenti said when they did live streaming, people claimed that they couldn't hear. "We're going to do it right," he said. There are no signs of slowing vaccine supply in Portage in the foreseeable future, says Health Commissioner Bob Gagins. The supply of COVID-19 vaccine has been ramping up in Portage County recently, and Portage County Health Commissioner Joseph DiOrio said he believes the supply will continue to increase as the production of Johnson & Johnson's new vaccine speeds up. By the end of the week, he said, the county is on track to receive 1,300 to 1,500 doses of vaccine for the week. It does seem like the pharmacies are getting less than the public health agencies and hospitals, he added. County officials dispute study. However, a nationwide study by the health department company Cogatavo identified Portage County, along with Summit and Medina counties, among the top 10 in Ohio most likely to run low on the vaccine. So far, DiOrio said he sees no evidence that the county is running short, adding that signs point only to increasing doses of vaccine for the general public in the coming weeks. "As we get through the schools, the state kind of took those vaccines and dedicated those for schools in the beginning of February," he said, predicting the county will receive a bumper crop of unearmarked vaccines beginning in late March, after school employees receive their second dose. Meanwhile, he said, the Portage County Health District is working to find people with underlying conditions that predispose them to get sick from the virus. "We continue to move along with trying to identify those who have a disability and congenital conditions," said DiOrio. "We've worked through our MRDD board to try and isolate those individuals, and we're also doing that through our registration process online." COVID-19 in Portage County? More than half of Portage County firefighters and EMS personnel chose to get the COVID-19 vaccine. What's next? The pharmacies and county can now accept registrations from a new crop of people as phase 2 of the vaccine plans to get underway. As you may have heard, we do have phase 2, which includes eligibility for vaccinations for individuals 60 years of age or older, he said. Vaccination of people in previous phases continues, he said. We're still working through our list of 1B, he said. With our K through 12 schools, we've initiated all our vaccines for, I believe it was a dozen schools that designated us as their vaccine provider. We are coming up on their second doses. The second dose is coming up the third week of March, which is coming up next week. COVID-19 in Portage County. More than 1,000 Portage County school staff received the first COVID-19 vaccine. Phase 1C includes child care workers, people with congenital medical conditions, pregnant women, law enforcement and correction officers, and, said Diorio, but here are the risks. Meanwhile, risks remain for the county. I did receive information today that Portage County will remain the red status according to the Public Health Advisory System, he said, adding that not as many people seem to be watching the advisory system as attention turns fully to vaccination and the prospect of loosening up social distancing guidelines. Also, both Diorio and Kent Health Commissioner Joan Seidel said it's too early to end the mask-wearing mandate and social distancing rules as 4 other states have done. Personally, I think it's a bit premature to take away mask mandates and rely on personal responsibility, said Seidel. Not everybody's had the chance to get the vaccine yet. Diorio said he agrees with Seidel and believes there may be stronger direction coming from the federal government as President Joe Biden takes over responsibility for the nation's COVID-19 response from former President Donald Trump, who left it up to states how to respond. Everybody has a different point of view, he said. I do believe there's some evidence in the science that this is really the proven approach, and that's really the best protection we can offer until we can get this vaccine out to the majority of the population. Although the Johnson & Johnson vaccine does not have as high an effective rate as vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech, Portage County Health District Medical Director Mark Arredondo encouraged people to get it if it's available. At this point, it is recommended that anyone should receive it who can receive it, he said. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is also easier to manage because it doesn't demand the exceptionally cold storage and is a single-dose vaccine. The vaccine is estimated to remain stable for 2 years at -4 degrees Fahrenheit or -20 Celsius, and a maximum of 3 months at routine refrigeration at temperatures of 36 to 46 Fahrenheit or 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, states the company's website. To sign up to receive a vaccine through the health department, visit www.portagecountry-ohio.gov or call 330-296-9919. Various pharmacies in the county are also giving the vaccine, including Giant Eagle, Acme, Walgreens, Discount Drug Mart, Marks, and Walmart, to name a few. Relationships Matter to Black Communities Seeking a Better Life by Bob Gagins. Relationships matter, says Ivana Washington Greer, Kent State University Assistant Vice President of Student Affairs, during a recent panel discussion to explore race issues hosted by the Kent Interfaith Alliance online. Local Roots of Racial Disparity. Where do we go from here? Featured several panelists bringing a variety of experiences to the table, and it became evident all, for a variety of reasons, valued relationships as a way forward. For Neil Dukes, a native Kent historic South End neighborhood, the panel discussion may end up illustrating that point particularly. Dukes, who works at Kent State University as a chef on the graveyard shift, has a dream of owning his own restaurant, which he shared during the discussion. Dealing with property owners and banks has been a frustrating experience, he said. I always have to deal with owners who own land and facilities, he said. It always bothers me that when I go to meet them, I have to overdress. Over the years, that's really bothered me. He said a downtown Kent property owner wouldn't meet with him because he looked like a thug. Those are things that have troubled me all of my life, says Dukes. I really see it as a problem in Kent. Near the end of the panel discussion, Doria Daniels, another panelist who is a local historian and community leader, said she may be able to introduce Dukes to some people who can help. Portage County NAACP Executive Director Geraldine Hayes Nelson said there were others following the discussion who came forward to help Dukes. There are some individuals from the community who have reached out to me, she said. Hayes Nelson said the African American community in Kent needs greater visibility. We're not present, she said. There's nothing there. In every community you go to, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name is somewhere. Where we live in the city of Kent, that's one thing that's not happened. She said she hopes either the gazebo near the West Main Street Bridge or the bridge itself can be renamed for King. It just takes so long to go to these committees and meetings, she said. Next year for Martin Luther King Day, we'd like to be dedicating that bridge. Daniels, in her presentation, also emphasized the importance of relationships as well, particularly those among neighbors in the south end of Kent. Since everybody was poor, we had to work together for survival, she explained. But she said racial bias is still a fact of life for African Americans in the area. In the South End, she said new community leaders are needed. We can't just be concerned with race relations, said Daniels. We've got to sustain our neighborhoods. She said there are 2 restaurant locations open, and neighborhood development services may be able to help Dukes financially. I've got 50 years on him, she said, of her experience building relationships and connections around the county. Networking is building partnerships and relationships with the city and area businesses. I've been here a long time and have learned how to build those relationships. As a new Kent area resident, Washington Greer said she worked consciously to build relationships as a new community member 20 years ago. She said enrolled her kids in Kent City schools because of their diversity. To me, it was also about organized relationship building, taking advantage of those opportunities to meet teachers, she said, adding she has since joined organizations. She says finding ways to build bridges with those who are different is an important part of healing racial wounds. Having a common concern or goal, that is one of the reasons I sought the Women's Social Club, because of the scholarships they give to students of color at the high school, she said. Relationships matter, and to take advantage of them, you have to look for opportunities to gain new relationships, organizations, and committees, and nurture understanding and bridge racial divides. Daniels said the South End Neighborhood Association is hoping to get the recreation center on Franklin Avenue renamed after Robert Wright, a 20-year director of the center and employees of the school. And now let's move on to opinions. Letter. Public transit agencies urge Ohio lawmakers to restore funding. Governor Mike DeWine's budget, as introduced in early February, would deal a devastating blow to public transportation in Ohio and the people it serves. Funding for public transit in the proposed state budget was slashed by nearly 90% compared to funds appropriated by the General Assembly just 2 years ago, down from $70 million to $7.3 million. This cut was not because of budgetary issues or lack of need. According to the Ohio Department of Transportation's Transit Needs Study, the state should allocate $200 million per year to public transportation. The American Society of Civil Engineers recently gave Ohio's public transit infrastructure a D grade. Due to the lack of clear, dedicated funding, transit spending in Ohio is set in the 2-year state budget. This creates volatility in funding as demonstrated by the proposed budget and does not allow transit systems to plan long term. Public transit creates opportunities for independence and provides access to community resources for those with no other means of transportation. One SARTA rider stated that without public transit, they would miss life-sustaining medical treatment. Another passenger uses our services to get their children to school, and without it, they would not have access to child care. Metro and PARTA have riders with similar stories to tell. Public transit is the lifeline of our communities. Without reliable public transit, Ohioans would miss critical medical appointments, students would not be able to get to school, and people would be unable to make daily essential trips. The COVID-19 pandemic solidified the essential nature of public transit. PARTA, SARTA, and Metro provided more than 6 million trips in 2020 for those who rely on public transportation to get to work, school, medical appointments, the grocery store, and fulfill other life necessary trips. While the federal COVID relief packages provided much needed short term assistance during the unprecedented year, public transportation agencies have been faced with a drastic increase in operational costs and reduced revenues that will take years to return to pre pandemic levels, if they ever do. PARTA, SARTA, and Metro are pleased the Ohio House of Representatives Finance Committee restored some of the transit funding cut from the budget. We strongly encourage the Ohio Senate and Governor DeWine to support this move. If not, thousands of Ohioans will not be able to make their life necessary trips, and many jobs will be at risk. Ohio needs transit now more than ever. Restore transit funding to save Ohio transit. Claudia Armheim is the General Manager CEO of PARTA in Portage County. Don Disler is the CEO of Metro in Summit County. And Kurt Conrad is the Executive Director CEO of SARTA in Stark County. Well, friends, this concludes the reading of the Record Courier for Tuesday, March 9th. My name is Pam. Thank you for inviting me into your home today. Thanks for listening. Keep safe. Be blessed. Make it a great day.